It's 6 p.m. on a Monday here in Korea. Welcome to our newscast. I'm Daniel Che. Let's start with the headlines. At the annual New Year meeting, President Park Geun-hye convenes with business and political leaders at the presidential office. She brought to light challenges ahead, the urgency of economic revival, reforms, and need for change in attitude of lawmakers. The circuit breaker was triggered on Monday by a 7% dip in the Chinese benchmark index. The session was initially halted for 15 whole minutes. Iran cuts diplomatic ties with Saudi Arabia following a mass execution which included a prominent Shia Muslim cleric. To avoid angry protesters, diplomats rushed to leave their embassies. President Park Geun-hye hosted an annual ceremony for business and political leaders at the presidential office where she urged them to serve the public and help the Korean economy continue its growth momentum in the new year. Song Ji-sun starts us off.
Under the slogan Innovation for the Future Generation, President Park Geun-hye held an annual meeting with top government officials and identified the challenges facing the Korean economy, like slowing Chinese demand and the sluggish global economic recovery. President Park said without change and innovation, the Korean economy would face a difficult situation. Stressing that reforms could prevent such crises, Park added the nation must unite to create growth engines for the future generations and the next 30 years to come. In order to do so, Park said that politicians must work on reforming themselves, calling on lawmakers to engage in politics for the public. Prime Minister Hwang Kyo-won, National Assembly Speaker Chung Eui-hwa, as well as ruling party and business leaders were among those present at Monday afternoon's event. But opposition party chairman Moon Jae-in and floor leader Lee Jong-gun did not attend the meeting for the first time during Park's term, citing the current standoff at the parliament between rival parties. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
The April 13th general election is just 100 days away now, but candidates are still awaiting a decision on how constituency boundaries should be redrawn. It looks unlikely progress will be made anytime soon, as a National Election Commission, or the NEC's subcommittee tasked with dealing with it, not only failed to finalize plans, but also failed to schedule another round of meetings after discussions held over the weekend. National Assembly Speaker Chung Eui-hwa is still pushing for a political solution, though, urging the main rival parties to try and reach a compromise by Tuesday. The NEC says it will come up with its own plan if there is no agreement by Friday at the latest. The subcommittee said an electoral map proposed by Assembly Speaker was discussed, but members could not agree on which districts to select for readjustment. North Korean leader Kim Jonguns New Year's message to South Korea this year fell short of last year's, where he went as far as to propose an inter-Korean summit. Still, many experts say it's likely Pyongyang will propose surprise talks around the time of its Congress of the Workers' Party, a possible indication of progress in inter-Korean ties. Connie Kim has the details.
Raising the curtain on 2016, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un said Pyongyang is open to talks with South Korea.
We are willing to hold talks in an open-minded manner with anyone who wants peace and unification.
Inter-Korean relations have been at a standstill, with the vice ministerial talks in December ending without an agreement or set date for further meetings. The two Koreas remain at odds over the issue of Mount Kumgang tours. Pyongyang demands that the tours be resumed, while Seoul wants assurances that there will not be a recurrence of incidents like the shooting of a South Korean citizen in 2008. But many experts say the stalled talks could take a turn around North Korea's Workers' Party Congress in May.
It will be hard for Kim Jong-un to lay out a vision at the party meeting without a breakthrough in the inter-Korean front. There is high possibility Pyongyang will come up with a surprise offer or propose talks in the meeting if there's no improvement before the rare Congress party.
For inter-Korean talks to take place, many North Korean watchers say ties with China, its traditional ally, will have to come first.
The most important thing for Kim Jong-un is restoring North Korea-Sino relations and improving inter-Korean ties. If ties with China are mended, relations between the two Koreas are expected to get a boost following the rare party congress.
South Korea's unification ministry says doors for inter-Korean dialogue are open. But experts in Seoul say the timing of the next round of talks and the agreement will be closely watched for any breakthrough in relations. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
The dark clouds hanging over the global economy seem set to stick around into the new year, dragging down growth largely due to changes to the world's top two economies, the U.S. and China. For this report, we turn to Kim Jonguns.
Data compiled by Bloomberg shows financial institutions are projecting global growth of 3.1% on average, the lowest since the aftermath of the global financial crisis in 2009. The International Monetary Fund estimates the global economy will expand by 3.6% this year, but the slightly rosier projection is not exactly a sign of optimism. IMF Managing Director Christine Lagarde told German business daily Handelsblatt on December 30th that global growth would be disappointing and uneven this year, as a U.S. rate hike will lead to tighter credit conditions and higher debt servicing costs for emerging markets. The IMF calculated that emerging market companies have overborrowed by $3 trillion in the last decade, reflecting a quadrupling of private sector debt between 2004 and 2014. Data compiled by Bloomberg also shows financial institutions project the U.S. will grow at the same rate as last year at 2.5%, while the Chinese economy will expand at the rate of 6.5% this year, slightly lower than the 6.9% it recorded last year. As China is Korea's largest trading partner, the country is likely to see sluggish growth as well. Seoul-based LJ Economic Research Institute says Korea's growth this year will be slightly lower than last year at 2.5%, while state-run think tank Korea Development Institute predicts growth in the mid-2% range. The Bank of Korea said last month it will lower its growth forecast from its current estimate of 3.2% due to higher external risk. Kim Jonguns, Arirang News.
China halted trading on Monday after shares there plunged almost 7%. The event sent ripples across the region, with Asian markets kicking off the new year lower, and Korea was no exception. Hwang Ji-hye has the details.
China's benchmark index dropped a whopping 7% on the first trading day of 2016, triggering the market to close for the rest of the day. The session was initially halted for 15 minutes after stocks fell 5%. But when stocks continued to dip, a circuit breaker mechanism took effect, hitting the brakes on the volatility. Under the system, stock market movement of 7% from the previous session's close prompts a trading halt for the day. The plunge in the Chinese market came on the back of a sluggish factory activity survey that darkened the outlook for the economy. The official Manufacturing Purchasing Managers Index, or PMI, fell to 48.2 for December, marking 10 straight months of decline. A reading below 50 means contraction in activity. The gloomy news sent shockwaves across Asia. Korea's benchmark Kospi dropped 2%, while Japan's Nikkei fell 3%. Shares in Australia also closed down 0.5%. Korea's currency also took a hit from the slide of Chinese shares, ending down 15.2 won against the U.S. dollar for a near 3-month low. Hwang Ji-hye, Arirang News.
Elsewhere around the world, tension between Saudi Arabia and Iran continue to escalate as diplomatic relations are cut following Saudi's execution of a prominent Shia cleric. Saudi diplomats have now evacuated from Iran. Lee So-eun fills us in.
Saudi Arabian diplomats have evacuated from Iran on Monday after angry protesters attacked their embassy in Tehran, setting it on fire last weekend. They rallied against Riyadh's execution of a prominent Shia Muslim cleric, resulting in the cutting of diplomatic ties. Saudi Arabian Foreign Minister made the announcement on Sunday, giving Iranian diplomats 48 hours to leave the country.
We are determined not to allow Iran to undermine our security. We are determined not to let Iran mobilize or create or establish terrorist cells in our country or in the countries of our allies.
The execution of Shia cleric Shaikh Nim Anim ignited Sunday's protests. He led protests in 2011 in Sunni-ruled eastern part of the kingdom, where the Shia minority complains of marginalization. He was executed on Saturday along with 46 others who were convicted of terror-related offenses. Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei called the execution a great crime.
Saudi politicians, rulers and policymakers should have no doubt that there will be divine vengeance for this blood. God Almighty will not pardon those who spill the blood of the innocent.
Saudi Arabia and Iran have long been at odds. Their ties strained even further in recent decades over various issues, including Iran's nuclear program and deaths of Iranians during the Hajj pilgrimage in both 1987 and 2015. Lee-Soon, Arirang News.
Shifting gears to a different story now, Korea is exporting more food products to the Middle East and other Muslim countries than ever before. What's even better for Korea is that growth in 5 key Muslim markets has exploded since the turn of the decade. Han-Dan gives us the numbers that reflect the vast potential of these new markets.
Muslim countries are steadily getting a taste for Korean food products, according to a report by the Korea Rural Economic Institute. It shows exports of both fresh and processed foods to 5 Muslim-majority nations have grown 69.3% in 5 years, reaching $712 million in 2014. Ringing up a bill of $345 million was the United Arab Emirates, Korea's biggest customer, followed by Indonesia, Malaysia, Iran, and Saudi Arabia. Outbound food shipments to Iran saw the biggest jump in the 5-year period of 247%. Food exports to Indonesia and Saudi Arabia also doubled over the cited period. So, what are the most popular items? Among fresh produce, strawberries, kimchi, rice, and red ginseng were the best sellers. And for processed foods, Korean coffee, ramen, ice cream, and powdered milk have been flying off the shelves in ever greater numbers. The report says that with increasing sales of these 5 countries, Korea could gain a steady foothold in the Muslim food market on a global scale. The report also points to Southeast Asian countries such as Malaysia and Indonesia as key target markets due to their fast-growing economies, which may positively affect consumer preferences. Han-Dan, Arirang News.
The economic burden on Koreans from drinking, smoking, and obesity has been increasing over the years. Kim Min-ji shares with us a new report that reveals socio-economic costs now account for more than half of all health insurance fees.
Over 19.8 billion US dollars. That's how much Korea faced in socio-economic costs in 2013 due to drinking, smoking, and obesity. To give the figure some context, it's equivalent to almost 60% of the income from health insurance fees. According to the National Health Insurance Service, the figure has been on an upward trend since relevant data began to be compiled since 2005. Drinking took up the majority at just over $8 billion, followed by smoking at about $6 billion and obesity at $5.8 billion. Although obesity makes up the smallest proportion, it's increasing at the fastest rate. During the past 8 years, costs from obesity grew more than 2.2 times, while the respective figure for both smoking and drinking increased about 1.6 times. By age, those in their 50s accounted for a third of the costs, followed by those in their 40s and 60s. Breaking down the cost, about 40% were medical, followed by costs resulting from early death and loss of productivity.
The government needs to educate young Koreans about the health problems that can result from drinking alcohol, smoking, and eating unhealthy. If not, a vicious cycle will be created, and the negative impact on the public will increase, from rising insurance costs to second-hand smoke and increased taxes for education programs.
Experts add that people need to take more precautions and responsibility as an individual when it comes to such issues. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Locally produced movies came out on top at the box office in Korea in 2015, often outperforming their mega-budget Hollywood rivals. Many credit the upswing to the technological advancements that played a crucial role in the Korean film industry's resurgence. Park Se-young has this report.
This movie about a man who hunts down the last tiger in Korea was filmed without a tiger. In fact, the nearly 4-meter-long tiger is a 100% computer-generated character, and it took the visual effects team a year and about $3.5 million to create it. To bring the tiger to life, the team observed tigers at every zoo in Korea, analyzing every detail. The actor who played the tiger climbed mountains and studied the movements and facial expressions of tigers to get the mannerisms just right.
My role was to make the other actors believe there was actually a tiger in front of them. I try to absorb the energy of everyone on set.
Parts of a movie, The Himalayas, were actually filmed in the Himalayas, but members of the CGI team also used computer-generated imagery to create realistic hiking scenes. All of this was created with less than a tenth the budget of most major Hollywood films, and the results are surprisingly similar with few differences in quality.
One important aspect in the Korean film industry's advancement is technology. Even though they have far lower budgets than Hollywood films, production crews are still able to cook up competitive scenes.
With the rapid advances in technology, experts expect a bright future for the Korean film industry. Park Se-young, Arirang News.
And we've come to the end of our newscast. As always, thank you for watching.